Everybody back there behave. I'm an addict named Nancy. I don't know why I volunteered for this one, because this one was a hard one for me to try to find stuff in the basic text, and not hard, but for me to kind of find the difference between denial versus refusal. So I went to the dictionary because I think I know things, but I don't know things, so I have to go to the dictionary and find out that I don't know things. So denial, what the dictionary says is a denying, saying no to a request. It's a contradiction, a refusal to believe or accept, and refuse is to decline to accept, to decline to do something, to grant the request of someone. And I was sitting here and trying to apply this to my recovery. I have to read this stuff, and I gotta write stuff down because my mind doesn't work like it used to, so I'm sorry about that. I had to make some notes. And for me, the difference between denial and refusal is, when I'm in denial, I don't believe whatever someone is trying to say to me is true, so I don't believe it needs to be changed. And refusal is, I believe it to be true, but I don't want to do anything to change it. I like the way it is. It works for me for that time. So that's kind of where I went with that. And just some of the things that came up for me in denial was, when I got here, what I truly believed when I went to treatment, because I went to treatment, I had no clue about Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't think anything like that existed, never knew that it existed. I thought that when I went to treatment, they were going to fix up some sort of a combination of drugs that would get me to where I wanted to be on a daily basis. That would work. That wouldn't give me the consequences, that wouldn't stop working, that would stay where I wanted to be, and I wanted to be flatlined. I didn't want to feel anything, and I didn't want to really be in touch with anything or anyone. And in treatment, of course, they laughed at me when I said that was their job to do that, and they sent me to Narcotics Anonymous. They sent me other places, but I found a home in Narcotics Anonymous, thank God. And I remember sitting around the table when I first got there and watching all you guys laughing and carrying on and having a good time, and I'm thinking, these motherfuckers are on something because they're way too happy. And at the place that I went, there was a room outside of the room where we were at, and I could see people coming and going, and I'm like, yeah, that's where they're going to get high. It was a bathroom. They weren't going anything to get high there. They were just using the bathroom. But they were happy, and I didn't understand how they could be happy when I was so miserable. You know, how dare you, you know? And I struggled with this whole concept of being an addict because I had the same type of society's understanding of what an addict was, and I didn't do some of the things that some people have done. I hadn't lost anything. I still had my job, I still had my car, I still had my possessions. I didn't do some of the things that I heard some of the people doing. I ended up at 18 months clean. For some reason, I kept coming back. And the only reason I can tell you is that there's a God out there somewhere, and I kept coming back. And I remember when I was coming up on 18 months clean, I called a friend of mine, and I said, I really just don't know if I'm an addict or not. Well, I called him on a Saturday night about 12:30. And he laughed at me and he said, well, first of all, Nancy, addicts don't call anybody at 12:30. They're sleeping. They're not up at 12:30 at night. And he gave me an assignment, and I did it for some strange reason, but he told me to look in the dictionary, or in the back of the basic text, and read everything about obsession and compulsion. And that was the first time in 18 months that I had accepted for myself that I was an addict. I had gone and said I was, because that's what you're supposed to do when you have to talk, But at 18 months clean, I finally got out of the denial because I didn't believe that I was. I was just waiting for someone to give me that combination that my life would go back to the way it kind of was before all the bad stuff started happening. And so then one of the things that I ended up having to do, because I didn't believe I was like one of you, because I hadn't filed bankruptcy, and I heard a lot of addicts had filed bankruptcy. At 5 years clean, I had to file bankruptcy, and it was very embarrassing. And it was because of a decision I made in active addiction. One of those consequences that we have to pay once we get clean because of the decisions and the actions that we did. And one of the other things that I did not identify, because I always looked at the differences instead of the similarities. I had to come to accept, once I started dealing with my past, because of my family's history and stuff, the way I was raised to be the family prostitute. The only difference between me and anybody else that would talk about being a prostitute is I didn't stand on a street corner. That's the only difference. So it was really hard when you start getting knocked out of denial, and it was the friends that I had that lovingly knocked me out of denial. The refusal part that I used, it took me some time to get a sponsor. Didn't take me long to get a sponsor because I knew I wasn't getting out of treatment until I got one. You know, we know how to get what we have to get where we have to go. And so I had 2 sponsors before I got out of treatment. One did not work out, and the second one worked second shift, and I worked first shift, and we had a wonderful conversation on the answering machine. Did you call your sponsor today? Yep. They never asked me if I started working any steps with them. So after a while, I realized that I had to get a sponsor and start working the steps. And the hardest thing for me was when we got to that 3rd step, when I started working with a sponsor, that there was actually a God out there. I could believe that there was a God out there for everybody else, because you guys deserved one. And I refused that there was one, absolutely positively refused that there could be one for me, because I had done so many bad things that there just was not a loving, caring God out there that would be able to come into my life and do anything for it. And I'm grateful that today I don't live in that denial and that refusal as much as I used to. God, it was horrible when I first got here. I don't know how I stayed clean. I really don't. I just went to a meeting every day and hung around clean addicts. That's what I did for a long time. And when I finally got serious and started working these steps, I realized that even though I don't really remember my first meeting, I've been to enough first step meetings that everything that I needed to stay clean was given to me at that first meeting. Get a sponsor, work the steps, go to meetings, don't pick up. And it was like, God, that's pretty simple, isn't it? And I always have to complicate the hell out of it. I have to say, no, that's not my problem. That isn't what's going on. And today I'm grateful because I don't have to live in that denial or that refusal. I know that there's something going on today. I'm not sure what it is. The difference from today versus probably 3 years ago, maybe, is that I'm willing to work the steps to find out what that something is. And the only reason I know that something's up is because I haven't smoked, and again, this is about me, this isn't about anybody else. I haven't smoked in 5 years. And I find myself with my friends that do smoke, I'm picking up their cigarettes, smelling them, they smell pretty good. I keep thinking I don't want to go to the gas station and go inside because I know I can buy a pack of cigarettes. My husband works during the day. I can smoke outside. He'll never know. I can brush my teeth. So I know that something's going on because I'm trying to fill that hole with whatever I can. And I've thought about this because I have a friend that said, put your clean time on it. And I have to. Because I know if I pick up a cigarette, then it'll justify to pick up the next thing. And it'll justify to pick up the next thing. And the next thing I know, I'm going to be using. I worked too hard to get here. So I went to my sponsor and I said, there's something going on. I've written on the second step. I'm waiting for her and I to be able to have some time that we have together to sit down and do it. And I said, there's something going on. I said, part of me feels like I need to get to the fourth step. And first she looked at me, she said, you want to go to a fourth step? What the hell's wrong with you? You don't like doing that kind of stuff. I said, but there's something going on, and I know that if I don't identify it, that if I keep thinking, well, it's just I want to smoke, or the other thing that's going on is the eating thing. I've had a surgery that I'm not supposed to be eating sugar. What do we got sitting on the table in my cabin? I got cookies. I had Rice Krispie bars. And this isn't to endorse any of this stuff. I'm just telling you the junk shit but we got Diet Pop. That's like going to McDonald's and ordering a Big Mac, a large fry, and I'll have a Diet Pop. Why screw up the meal? Just have the regular pop. And I don't want to get to that point where I can justify keep doing this because I'm hurting me. And that's how come I know something's up. I'm hurting me. So I'm not in denial, I'm not in refusal, but I'm not getting an answer. So she said, go ahead and start on your third step. Because I wanted to go to the fourth, and she said, why are you skipping over the third? Why don't you see what God's got to say about this? And then we'll do your fourth step. We'll do your second and third together, and then you can start on your fourth. It's a good thing to have a sponsor, because left to my own devices, I would have stood out there on the ledge and probably jumped off, And she says, no, you're skipping a step. You can't be skipping a step in this. So I'm grateful today that I know that something's there. I'm grateful today that I'm not afraid to find out what it is, because I used to be. I used to run from that stuff. And running when you're clean is a hell of a lot harder to run and hide than it is when you're using drugs, because you got these friends that keep in touch with you. The speaker last night said, is it a phone list or is it a network? And the only problem that I have is I need to sit down and write down some numbers, because I used to have them all written down, and now with all the cell phone and stuff, I have them all on my cell phone. Well, if something happens to my cell phone, I'm screwed, because I don't know my sponsor's phone number. She's just, she's in there. So I bought a new address book so I can write those numbers down so I have them someplace. But I'm grateful I have the network that I do, because if I didn't, I don't know how I would have ever stayed clean. I have friends that, from the beginning were there, and they're still there 13 years later, almost 14 years later. And I know that if I stay in denial, I'm going to die. And the hardest part, something that I've been dealing with this last, it's been over a year, about a year and 5 months about, I had to go to outside sources to deal with some mental conditions that I have, mental issues, mental illness. And because I was going to a professional, I had turned that over to a professional that supposedly knew better than what I did. Last year I was put on some medication that was not good for me to be on. I had no clue what this medication did, and that was my fault. And just because you go to a professional doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And I ended up having to go to the fourth. On July 18th, I had 13 years clean. And by August 6th, I finally got out of the denial that things were so bad that I was to a point where I had to look at my husband and say, I think I need to go to the fourth floor suites or I'm going to kill myself. Because the medicine was just, it was not a medication that an addict should have been on. And the doctor knew it, that I was an addict, but the doctor doesn't understand being an addict. And it's really frustrating, but because of the medication and the place I was mentally, I couldn't stand up for myself and say, this isn't working. the best I could say is, it's not getting any better. So he would up the medication, which was fucking me up. So I'd go back 2 weeks later, how you doing? It's not getting any better. I can't hardly pull myself out of bed. So he would up the medication and it would get worse. And finally, after I started hearing stuff in my head and was able to look at my husband and say, I'm going to kill myself, but I'm going to have to use to do it. Then Narcotics Anonymous kicked in and said, you're not going to use. I have written in my book, my long-term goal is to die clean. That's the way I want to die. But I knew if I was going to kill myself, I was going to have to get high to do it because I don't have the guts to do that. And it was real confusing. But because I've stayed around long enough and I'm willing to listen to what people say around these tables, I had my sponsor and a very dear friend of mine, when they found out the medication that I was on, they're like, you got to get off of it. And you're not going to be able to get off of it by yourself. You're going to have to be weaned off. So that was another reason to go to the hospital. And I hear a lot of people say that they don't have another use in them. And I don't know, it's something seems in our area like there's this powder puff recovery. And everybody's bullshit gets co-signed. And it bothers me because when we co-sign people's bullshit, addicts are going to die. And I usually will say, I get upset and it's like, ugh! You know, it's no, you have another use in you. The question is, do you have another recovery in you? I believe I have another use in me. Another recovery, I'm not guaranteed nothing on that one. You know, and we tell people that it's okay to relapse. No, it's not okay that you relapsed. It's okay that you're back. There's a difference. And that denial, and sometimes I wonder if it's not that we get jealous that they got to get high and we didn't, because I struggled with that. When I first got clean, I have a family that's nothing but addicts on my dad's side of the family. They're pretty dysfunctional. And I remember saying to my sponsor at the time, how come they get to get high and I don't? You know, I was really pissed off that I knew that here I am sitting at, you know, after I'd come home from a meeting, I'm sitting at home not getting high, and they'd already gotten high that day. And she turned around, she looked at me and she said, who said you can't get high? Well, NA does. No, it's a suggestion. So that took that jealousy and that refusal to believe, you know, that it's their choice, and my choice really was to stay clean. So I had to walk away from a family. And it's been 13 and a half years since I've seen them. And it's okay because I do have, my sister works back where I used to live, and she works with one of my cousins, and they're doing the same fucking thing 13 and a half years later as they were 13 and a half years ago. So it's like, you know, denial comes with this thing called the disease of addiction. I don't like it when somebody points out that I have said something inappropriately, or I have these character defects, or if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to be hurting. But I'm grateful that I have friends in my life that are willing to tell me the truth and not sugarcoat my bullshit. Because I believe, for me, that if my disease is up and your disease happens to be up, we could end up killing each other. I've come to respect this thing called the disease of addiction. And this is a part of my story. This was a hard one to stay clean through, but about 4 years ago now, I had a nephew that was 26 years old. I know some of you guys have heard this story, but this is where the refusal part comes in too for me in my life. He was 26 years old. He lived up in Minnesota. He was working with the big boys, big dope dealers, blah, blah, blah. He became his own best customer, and they came after him, so he moved down here to live with his mom. And my sister came to me and said, well, Ron doesn't want, she said, this is what he said. Ron said he doesn't want to hear a fucking thing about recovery. I never hid I had contact with her kids. I never hid my recovery from them. And I got on the phone and I called my sponsor. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do? He doesn't want to hear anything about it. I said, and I know he's using. I know he's in a bad place. He needs to get help. And she said, Nancy, it's about attraction, not promotion. He doesn't want it. And he was down here for 2 weeks, and I happened to be able to go to, it was Gershna convention, and I got a phone call from my husband, and I was told that my nephew was dead, that he'd shot himself. And it was because he refused any type of help. And for whatever reason, he didn't want what he could have had. And if anybody sitting here doesn't believe that the disease of addiction can kill, I strongly am against that, because this disease is in my life for 2 reasons. It's to lie to me. It's to tell me, it's okay. It's okay to have a cookie. I've never had one of anything my entire life. I remember being a kid, I had 2 hands, and they needed to be filled with something. If it was an apple, it was 2 apples. If it was a cookie, it was probably 2 cookies. It tells me that you could probably smoke 1 cigarette. And I know, because I've done this, the day before I got married, I had stopped smoking for a little while, and the day before I got married, I picked cigarettes up. That first pack sucked. But the packs after that were wonderful. If I can get through that first pack, I know if I get through that first pack, then I'm done. I'll be off to the races. I'll be back up to 3 packs a day. And that will really hurt, because they're too damned expensive right now. So this denial and this refusal, I try really hard not to refuse if somebody comes to me and says something. Maybe if one person is telling me, it's like, okay, the old saying, if one person says you're an asshole, yeah, okay, maybe they're having a bad day. But if more than one comes to you and says you're an asshole, you better go look in the mirror and see if there's an asshole looking back at you. It's just that simple. And whoever, and I try to complicate the hell out of this simple program. It's too bad. But I don't want to be in the denial, and I don't want to be in the refusal. So whatever's going on with me needs to come up, and I know that it's a process and it will happen. And I just want to, I always go to the literature whenever I take a topic to talk about. And in the Just for Today, it's acceptance and change. It was under denial in the back of the book. I like that, so you can look up topics real easy. It says acceptance and change, December 21st. Freedom to change seems to come after acceptance of ourselves. Basic text, page 56. Fear and denial are the opposites of acceptance. None of us are perfect. Even in our own eyes, all of us have certain traits that, given the chance, we would like to change. We sometimes become overwhelmed when contemplating how far short we fall of our ideals, so overwhelmed that we fear there's no chance of becoming the people we'd like to be. That's when our defense mechanism of denial kicks in, taking us to the opposite extreme. Nothing about ourselves needs changing, we tell ourselves, so why worry? Neither extremes gives us the freedom to change. Whether we are long-term NA members or new to recovery, the freedom to change is acquired by working the 12 steps. 12 of them, not skipping over 3. When we admit our powerlessness and the unmanageability of our lives, we counteract the lie that says we don't have to change. In coming to believe that a power greater than we are can help us, we lose our fear that we are damaged beyond repair. We come to believe we can change. We turn ourselves over to the care of the God of our understanding and tap the strength we need to make a thorough, honest examination of ourselves. We admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being what we found. We accept the good and the bad in ourselves. With this acceptance, we become free to change. Just for today, I want to change. By working the steps, I will counter fear and denial and find the acceptance needed to change. So that's where I'm at today, and I hope that's where I can stay and for the rest of my life, but I'm sure I'll go back into that denial. But Denial is one thing, but I think refusal is worse. I think denial is attached to this disease. Refusal is just me being bullheaded and stubborn. So thanks for letting me share.
Okay, our next speaker is Dwight G. from Warsaw.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Everybody, my name is Dwight. Definitely an addict. You gotta excuse me. I'm nervous, and this is really my first time sharing. I'm scared, and I got a bad problem stuttering.
Welcome.
Thank you. A little bit about myself. My father and I are from Jamaica. Moved to Florida to New York, where I live. So that is where my not only my addiction but my disease began to manifest. I'm the only boy of 4 girls. I have 4 girls. That's all I got is sisters. My father is Jamaican. My mother's Indian. We moved from Jamaica to Florida to Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Which means that my life was always going through changes. And my stress was always that I was always around girls. That was my stress. My mother treated me like a girl because she didn't know how to treat a boy. And my father worked 16 hours out of a day, and that was my role model. So my stress began to manifest itself in insomnia, sweats, anxiety, grandiosity, where I had to be the best of everything, where I had to be able to supply everybody else's need because everybody else depended on me. So when I went to school and whatnot, my mind was not only on school and being the best in school and whatnot, but you knew it. Why? Because I had a puddle right that came off my hands. But nobody noticed this. As I grew up, my family was not all my family, but a lot of them was in the drug business. Being young as I was always coveted and never allowed to do anything. The part where I decided to give up discipline and everything else was when I decided that I wanted to go to a university away from home, and everybody told me no. I disappeared for 3 days because I was at orientation day in South Carolina, which was the best time of my life. But when they found out that I didn't have parental approval, they called home, and home told me to send me back home. And that day I decided just to lose all discipline. So I signed up and went into the Marine Corps. And from that day on, I began to unravel all the discipline that I had. Been everywhere and did everything. So today is about, the subject is on denial and refusal. And I like to start it off by saying the passenger was flying in an airplane and he was asleep. And he thought the plane was flying, all safe. But something came along, and stewardess came along and slapped him, and he woke up. The oxygen came down. She put it on her face. She put it on his face and proceeded to tell him what he needed to do. Now I have to tell you that as I grew up and as I came out of the service, I began to experience a lot of different changes. I was not only involved in the physical addiction, I had the emotional. I couldn't sleep. I had to stay up all night. I had to watch TV. I had to do something. They finally come to find out that I had an emotional disability. So they put me on a lot of different medications. These are old medications, but a lot of different medications. And as I began to find out, my emotional disability ran well with my addiction disease. They ran one-on-one. And there came to be a time as I took the medication, I could not understand the difference between using illegally and using medically. And I began to go in and out of rehabs. I've been to a lot of, I've been to TCs at a time when they were like jail stints. 3 years or better. I know a lot of what you would call old timers, like Gene from Brooklyn and Ed Brown and people I'm talking about that started in AA and came along to NA, but they came along at a time when they did not switch what they had to say, the message, because the message was just that an addict, any addict. See, because the message was that there was a wrench to fit every nut. That was the message that I had. So wherever I went, I was powerless over me. And I had to begin to understand that. See, because I had to begin to understand that even though I wasn't using, I was still not sane. Because I had not accepted it. Denial is says we do recover, in high and wide, is that denial protects me from reality, from the pain of reality. That's what it says, So it protected me from what? Wanting to go kill myself because I kept using. And I let you know today that my using took me to places that I refuse to see that it was hurting me. I refuse to see that it was hurting you. I refuse to see that it was taken away from my life. I refuse to see everything. All I could see was my using. So self-centeredness was my disease. So as I came and I sat down in NA, I did not accept it. And as I began to still do things I had to do for my using, the only thing they told me was keep coming back. Matter of fact, they told me this: we'll be here waiting for you when you do get back. And the hurting part was when I came back, they were still there, and I wasn't. So as I kept doing the things that I need to do for my using, for my hurting me, I come to find out that a lot of things that I did do was taken away from me seeing any part of life. I suffer now from CIS. Can't remember shit. You know what I'm saying? And today, so today, man, as I stumble through a lot of the things I'm talking to you as, a lot of it are coming back to memory. And I got 5 years. Matter of fact, I got 5 years and 8 months.
All right.
And see, that's my applause for life, because they say what? The word is that the joy of an addict is the daily reprieve, and the joy of an addict that he has a daily reprieve, and that means that I do not have to use to go back through life. See, my daily reprieve is this: when I wake up in the morning, it's like, God, okay, what me and you gonna go do together? Because you ever check out the word guidance? God, you and I dance. And and so that means that when I get up in the morning, I do not know what to do. I do not know how to live. See, because all my using was not with the drug. For newcomers, it is about the drug. For me, having 5 years, I am the drug. See, because even when I get excited, my adrenaline keeps going. That's part of me. Because the word stop is my enemy. More. Pour me more. Give me more. So me having some kind of constraint, me finding other people that can help me to do this, see, and I have to be able to learn how to do things just by watching you. When I come to a meeting, when I come to a meeting, I'm watching you to help me. See, because when I come here, when I first came to Warsaw, hey, look, I swear I wasn't prejudiced. I swear I had a problem, but I come from a predominantly black surrounding. So when I got here, no matter what, I still demonstrated a person having a racially divided mind. because I wouldn't sit next to you and I have a problem feeling comfortable by you. That's part of my addiction. That's the isolation. That's the emotional disturbance in me. And if I don't do anything about it, I'll be out the door going to find a way to find a solution. Ergo, here is my problem. I try to find an outside solution for an inside problem. So if I sit there and find a way to get through this by what you tell me, because one addict helping another is without parallel. So I'm finding you, and by me being who I am, I'm afraid to approach you, I'm afraid to talk to you. I sit back and I watch you. And I watch an addict that's following his own program. And I found me a sponsor for the day. And I found somebody. So when you tell me to be here, I got a choice to say, okay, I'm gonna be here or not. But my addiction, my isolation, my mind would tell me I don't have to be here. So me in surrender, and if I go to my high and why, the definition of surrender is, I done lost it. But you know, oh, okay, nope, I done lost it. But you know, the definition of surrender is in the high and why, and I'm not gonna try to find it. Yes, I am, because I got that kind of mind. I'm not gonna try to find it. It's the understanding that I have a human failability. And for me to surrender, I have to surrender to a power greater than myself, and to understand that it will get me to a positive solution. So acceptance doesn't mean that I know whether it's right or wrong. Acceptance is that I don't have the answer to find a positive solution to my problem. So if I'm not getting to where I want to get to, and I know I'm not doing it right, it's not whether I'm doing it right or wrong. It's that I'm not getting there and you getting there. So I have to be able to accept that. So here's what I'm saying. Me coming out of denial means that I accept that, I'm clean. Me accepting that I have some responsibility. Because when I'm using, I'm insane. This is a spiritual program. I'm not a physical being trying to deal with spiritual principles. I'm a spiritual person trying to deal with physical principles. And if I stay with that, I'll believe that every word in here is physical. I'm not sick when I use. I'm sick when I think if I use, things will get better. So my insanity is my thinking. If it's a spiritual program, let's get it straight. If it's spiritual, so that means everything within me is working. So I gotta find a kind spirit without of me that can come in me, give me some knowledge, give me some understanding. See, because it tells me that if I do right, there's an old proverb that says that if I do right, you find favor and understanding between God and man. So if I'm in recovery, you know what I found out? What I hate? You get more responsibility. You do. And it rides right up on you. Have you ever get 90 days clean, whatever, and you're in a situation where kids are all around you? Then all of a sudden, you're doing a little bit better, and a kid comes and holds your hand, knowing that you're going to get your kids some ice cream. So they want some ice cream too? Or they know that you're doing it right. You go to the store or whatever, and they want to go with you, and they see a smile on your face, all of a sudden they want to be with you. Multiply that by 30 years and then with another adult. All of a sudden, they want you to be responsible for their feelings too. But in recovery, we begin to find out within myself. If we're doing the steps, we got the principles, and we got a sponsor. I began to find out things about myself that, hey, you know what? That at a young age, my mother got sick that I had to be put in a foster home for abandonment because nobody else. I wasn't a bad kid. It's just that I was the only boy, and all my family come from Jamaica, right? And because I was in America, they didn't want me. So I had to go to a foster home. So I get this feeling of abandonment. I get this feeling that you don't want me. You know what I'm saying? The same feeling. You see, and I understand that my addiction comes from not the way I was nurtured, the way I was raised, my environment, what I did, the decisions that I made that I didn't go through. All that comes into my disease. And as somebody once pointed out, the disease does not end with S. Disease is. I got one disease that manifests itself in so many different ways. Whether it's want to hurt myself, want to kill myself, want to kill you, I want to overeat, want to jump off a roof, want to be Superman. Whenever I'm not comfortable with myself, I want to find a way to make me feel comfortable. So when I sit down, I got a choice now. And that's my recovery. I got a choice. That is the most precious thing I got is my choice. I fought for that choice. Not only did I fought for it on the streets, not only did I fought because I was in the Marines at the end of Vietnam, not only did I fight for it in here. So when you tell me just because I want to change sponsors that I'm wrong, that's my choice. That's what I got. That's all I got. That's all I got. And I give it to God every day. So, you know, sometimes when I figure I'm doing wrong, you ever do right and you swear you think you're doing wrong? That's because I don't know what I'm doing. And you know, and I don't want to be responsible for that. You know, I had given this friend of mine, he's an old man, but he's a good man, and he wanted to go to the family reunion, but he didn't want to go with anybody else because they all drink. So he wanted me to take him. And me not remembering, because when things get frazzled, my memory goes, I didn't remember that the convention was today, so I promised to take him yesterday. I was really in a row about going or whatever, but I sat back and talked to a couple of people. And they said, well, hey, do what you feel you need to do. Ah, man, why'd you tell me that? So I took him. I did take him. And he was relaxed, got up there. And you know, everybody up there, I really found out that they already knew who I was. It made me feel comfortable. You know, sat down, watched the basketball game, and interacted. And you know what? I did not feel like using. More importantly, I knew I was out of another position, so I had help there. You know, and I stayed around with the people that looked after me. Today I come down and I really find out that my choice depends not on me, but it depends on you. It depends on my sponsor. It depends on me reading, because I found out that my choice, I have to give it to my higher power when I do my steps. They influence my choices. My spirituality, you know, influence my choices. You know, I want it always to be right for me. And when I'm wrong, oh man, look, I'm the type of person that get on myself. But today, you know what? I'm an 18-year-old in a 52-year-old body. Exactly what I am. My nurturing stopped when I was like 16, and began when I was like 48. So needless to say, when I came back out of the room, I was playing basketball and wanted to run here, run there. Had to learn how to work. Had to learn how to like accept directions. Had to learn how to be on time. Had to learn that what I want, and I found out something. I found my will and God's will is the same. It's just that I get little glimpses of it. You know what I'm saying? I got little glimpses of what I really want to be. And God, he got the whole picture. I just don't want to do all the things that he wants me to do. Because all the things that he wants me to do is about proving myself and building qualifications and building skills like patience and resilience and hope and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? I just want to be there to sign the check. So today, man, my choice is not mine. My hope is to be the best that I can. So I go by what you guys dictate to me, even at 52 years old, and that's humbling for me. That's really humbling for me. I hate it. I hate it. But I come down to like, I don't know how to live. I know how to live irresponsibly. I know how to take yours. You know what I'm saying? I know how to walk in the store and run, or I know how to. but to be able to walk and be free and be able to smell the flowers and be able to sit down and read. Here's what I'm saying. I'm not gonna hurt myself because I'm gonna hurt myself because the guilt I could do better and I don't know how. And there's a way to do it, I just can't grasp it without you. So when I come to you, I'm crossing another barrier. That's the choice. It's either stay here and be in misery or cross the fence into paradise. That's it. All right? Thanks for letting me share.
Before we open the floor for sharing, I need to remind everyone that you're being taped. If you wish not to be taped, please let me know so the tape can be turned off. It's now open.
Hi everybody, I'm an addict named Gina.
Gina.
And I just want to thank my higher power for getting me to this, wonderful, much needed convention, which we always call it a retreat, because it seems so spiritual. Just to kind of stay on what you guys were talking about, the denial and refusal. I just recently got to the point with having some acceptance on being an addict. Now I have 3 years in July 31st. But I struggled so badly with, having to be here and being like everybody else, recovering now. But I just don't want to be an addict. And I think when they talk about denial and how it will rob you of, the benefits of the program, and I was actually letting that do this to me, and also having a lot of issues with thinking that I had to learn how, and I still struggle with this, to try and have some fun and relax, and being able to find out who I am and be myself. So there were a lot of I don't want to do, had a hard time taking some suggestions from my sponsor, and just kind of allow myself to get into some space for a while with this whole process. And then I started experiencing a lot of my friends that were still practicing dying. In the last year, I've had 3 friends that died still using. And that might have been what kicked into reality, that if I continue to deny, the fact that I am an addict, I can easily find myself back out there, because I had saved some reservations. Really had. When I lost my mother after I had 15 months clean, and I thank God that she was able to see me, clean, because I think she was probably holding on, making sure I was okay, because she was almost 80 when she passed, so she had, lived a long time, but I still wasn't ready for her to go. And I had to move in with my father, and I would go to the refrigerator, and there would be a beer in there, because he drank beer. He can do that. He didn't have a problem. And I was standing there in front of it, and I'm like, okay, well, not today. But then when I would leave, and later on I would say, eventually I'm going to go back, and I'm not going to do this the rest of my life. I'm going to have a drink. Every day I went, I had to tell myself, not today, not today. And that's what kind of managed to get me through so far up to this day, that those not todays, not today, today is not the day. And then when some friends that are not in the fellowship said, well, do you think you have to do this the rest of your life? And I was like, I don't think I should have to. I said, but I'm not ready to give in I need it. And I'm still, at this point, still in denial of being an addict. So I said, but I'm not ready to lose the people that I have come to know and as my friends and who I depend on. So I just kept hanging in there and saying, not today. It turned around and my father got really sick last year, and he was in and out of the hospital constantly, and they took the beer away. And I was really glad, because it got so hard, and that's his house. I can't tell him what to do. And if he doesn't have a problem, and at 80, but it got so tempting where I would have to go in there. And some days I didn't see it. It's like I'm getting what I need. And then other days I'm standing there like, oh, I really could go for this, but finally one day it was like it was lifted through him not being able to drink and me not having to see it. It just made everything flow a little easier for me. The temptation or having to go through it, worked a lot better for me. And he hasn't gone back. He's doing 100% better, but he hasn't gone back to it, and I kind of thank God, because it helps me. It really does. And I also had to learn that with me having a lot of friends that are still practicing addicts, some worse than others, I had to understand that I have to limit my association with them. Because as I've gotten a little bit more time acquired, then I think sometimes, okay, I can go out with them. Every now and then it'll be okay. But I'm by myself. I'm not taking another recovering addict with me. So now I just had to learn that there's functions sometimes that you are going to go to, but to arm yourself. Put the armor over you and take some people with you when you do go to their functions. It will better equip me, make it, a little less on having the temptations and everything. So I'm trying to listen and take more suggestions to follow them, because truly they do work. It's been hard thinking sometimes that other people have the answer for your life. But they do, because everything I'm going through, there's somebody that's already been there. They've already done it, and they know. But when you come in here, and sometimes you're a little older, and sometimes when you're a little younger, you think that you've lived your life, and you had all your answers, and you made it through, and you finagled and worked some things out. So now you have somebody telling you how to do some things. I'm like, hold up, my sponsor is younger than I am, but she has 18 years. And I'm like, she's always trying to manipulate me. Which she does, but it's still for my benefit, And I tell her, and it's just more so the suggestions, Gina, you need to make more meetings. I got into school, and I thought that was more important sometimes, and I do a meeting a week or something, and she's like, the suggestions that she gives me is just to keep me clean, for today. And then the next day we start all over. So I'm doing much better at hearing her, listening to her, and trying to follow through with what she's saying, and definitely trying to work on a lot of the denials that I have, because they pop up in a lot of areas of my recovery, of my life, period. And I think sometimes along with denial just is really about control. You know, they kind of go hand in hand sometimes. I stay in denial because I don't want to relinquish the control that I think I have over things, people, places, or the way I think things should run. I'm in a home group situation where we just moved to a new location, but our location prior to was down in the basement, and it really has a personality versus principles. So now that I have a little bit more time, I've got my personality wanting to shine through too. And we're moving to a facility that, well, we've moved, and they have more tables. And we're going through this, you know, debate. I want to say debate, not arguing. Debate on how things should go now, and we can't bring old, you know, rules from one group into another because we went from one table to many tables, and just a lot of controlling, you know. And so I finally, the last time I went there, I had to really ask God to pray, you know, through me. I can't control how they act or what they do, but I didn't want to find myself walking out of there and then having to find another meeting, because I like that meeting and I do like those people, you know. And it's not about what we want, it's about what our higher power wants and what's best for the group, you know, as to how it should flow. So I had to really pray and say, you know, let's just do whatever you want to do, and then we can have a group discussion on it for our, when we have our group meeting, and let's just get through it, you know, because anybody newer or myself, we can get turned away from seeing some chaotic things go on. You know, you felt like you dealt with that in your using, and then you come in here and you see things going on. We want any excuse to leave. So I had to pray, and it worked out that second meeting okay, where we just got through it. And, you know, I'm going to keep praying on it. I tell other people, pray for our group, because I don't want to change groups. I really don't. I just want everything I would just like us to have some harmony. Just get through it, make the right decision for the group, and just go with it. But anyway, I just thought I would share as nobody else is getting enough. Thanks for letting me share.
Hi guys, I'm Steve. I'm an addict. Maybe it's that I'm a visual person, but I always kind of visualize denial as a wall, and okay, John, and it's kind of a thing that can kill us. Denial is the most insidious part of this disease, I think. It can rob us from seeing rationality and reality, and it's just amazing how it can rebuild itself if we're not working on our recovery. I think using creates this huge, thick, tall wall that is impenetrable, that the disease uses to protect itself from the reality of maybe I got a problem, or, you know, and I know it's a program of attraction rather than promotion, but once in a while I do try to, in a loving and kind way, drop a hint that will put a little crack in their wall. And I'm hoping a little bit of light comes through there. I got a friend, really upset, who's not here with us this weekend. He was last year, and he's back to thinking that it's okay to drink, and the reason he's not coming this weekend is because he needs the money. And he was really, I pointed out to him that he was really broke last year, you know, much more broke than he was this year, and he didn't, you know, but he's using rationality, his own rationality as a reason to not be here. And he's, I think if we don't continue to work on our program, those walls get put back in place by our disease, and they get stronger and taller and thicker. And those walls can kill us. because they make it so we can't hear the message right. It reinterprets the message coming through it, so that we hear it the way we want to hear it, to make it okay to start going back to our old way of thinking. And we can't even, from our own perspective, see or hear it. It's not the addict's fault, kind of, because we can't see it. But I think it's up to us a little bit to help put a crack in those walls and help each other see. You know, they say we're each other's eyes and ears, and I need that. So if you see me start to go back to some ass thinking, feel free to let me know. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.